In 1967, the Soviet Union presented what it called a revolution in land warfare. 13.5 tons, a 73mm gun, 8 firing ports, infantry fighting from inside armor across a nuclear battlefield. NATO was alarmed. The men who actually served inside it had a different name for it. They called it the Battle Grave of Infantry. That was not a Western insult. It was a Soviet verdict. And the evidence begins with the blueprint itself. After World War II, Soviet military doctrine shifted to a battlefield shaped by radiation, not just artillery. Deep battle, formalized in GAB-2 Memorandum No. 8563 and in post-war manuals, demanded that infantry advance through nuclear-blasted terrain without halting or scattering. The BTR-60, the standard-wheeled armored personnel carrier, quickly revealed its limits. Its thin armor and open troop compartment left soldiers exposed to blast shock, fallout, and gunfire. Soviet operational text from the early 1960s warned that wheeled hulls would not survive over pressure. Infantry forced to dismount before contact would be lost in radioactive hazard zones. Areas now assumed to be the rule, not the exception. The main armored directorate responded with a mandate that only a tracked vehicle could keep pace with tanks, seal against contamination, and allow troops to fight from within. Firing ports became a requirement, not a convenience. The 1963 GAB-2 circular specified a carrier that could drive through contaminated zones, deliver its squad straight into the breach, and keep them under armor until the enemy was destroyed. Funding came from the Strategic Armored Forces budget, justified by the belief that future combat would not allow infantry to fight on foot after a nuclear strike. Every design decision followed this logic. The hull was welded steel, sloped for deflection, but never thick enough to stop shaped charges or heavy machine gun fire. The vehicle carried a 73mm gun, a coaxial machine gun, and 7 firing ports, each intended to let soldiers fight without leaving the safety of the hull, but each creating new risks under real fire. Tracked mobility was non-negotiable. The BTR-60's wheels could not cross cratered mud or radioactive debris. The Kirov plant, under pressure from GAB-2 and the General Staff, produced a prototype that was lighter, faster, and more heavily armed than any previous Soviet personnel carrier. NATO analysts reviewing the 1967 Red Square debut saw the BMP-1 as a doctrinal leap. Fighting from inside armor, crossing rivers and contaminated zones at speed, keeping infantry and tanks together under nuclear threat, these developments became both a source of Western concern and Soviet pride. Yet doctrine dictated limits: thin armor for mobility, ammunition stored close to the crew for compactness. Survivability always came second to the drive for relentless offensive action. The contradiction was built into the steel. Doctrine promised survival, but battle would demand more. Steel defined every line of the BMP-1. The hull, welded from rolled armor plate, was shaped for deflection but never for true protection. Armor thickness ranged from 6mm on the roof to 26mm at its thickest, with the sides and rear as thin as 13mm. A 50 caliber armor-piercing round could pierce the hull at close range. RPGs and heavy machine gun bursts would not just breach the metal, they could ignite the interior. No composite layers, no spall liner, just simple steel. Ballistic test data confirmed that even a glancing hit could send fragments ricocheting through the compartment. Inside, the space was as unforgiving as the armor. 8 infantrymen squeezed into 6.7 cubic meters, each allotted less than a cubic meter. Bench seats ran back-to-back, knees pressed together. Their only exit was 2 rear doors, each doubling as a fuel tank. In a fire, escape meant pushing through burning diesel. The driver and commander sat forward, separated from the V6 diesel engine by a thin partition. To dismount, everyone had to cross the length of the compartment, past the transmission and exhaust. No emergency hatch. If the hull was breached, the compartment became a trap. The turret's 73mm 2A28 Grom gun dominated the interior. Its 40-round drum magazine sat directly beneath the crew, rounds stacked head to tail, each shell weighing over 5 kilograms, packed with propellant. The magazine door opened into the fighting compartment. A single hit from the front or from above could set off the entire load. Ballistic tests showed sympathetic detonation could occur in under a second. The Malyutka anti-tank missile, guided manually by wire, was stored in racks in the turret and hull. Its guidance wire was exposed and easily severed by shrapnel. The operator had to keep the crosshairs on target for up to 11 seconds, a near impossible task under fire. Gun ports lined the sides, 4 per side and 1 in each rear door. Intended for firing from inside, they became weak points. Each was a simple flap of steel. Ballistic tests in the 1990s showed a 12.7mm round could fragment the port, sending shards into the compartment. RPG hits at a port could tear open the hatch and ignite the interior. Ports often failed to seal after damage, letting smoke and fire pour in. Ammunition, fuel, and men shared the same tight space. NATO vehicles like the M2 Bradley isolated ammunition behind armored panels. The BMP-1 put firepower and speed ahead of survival. Vulnerability was not an oversight. It was the design. October 1973. Egyptian and Syrian divisions fielded more than 500 BMP-1 vehicles across Sinai and the Golan. Soviet liaison officers embedded with Arab headquarters recorded the first operational test of the vehicle's doctrine. Israeli Centurion tanks and M60 tanks opened fire from beyond 1 kilometer, well outside the effective range of the BMP-1 73mm Grom gun. Arab crews attempted to close the gap, but the Grom's low velocity and poor accuracy left them unable to respond. At these distances, the BMP's primary weapon was functionally silent. Declassified combat logs estimate BMP-1 losses in the range of 60 to 70% during the opening days. Israeli after-action reports describe hulls igniting after a single RPG or tank round, with internal ammunition racks detonating in seconds. Entire squads perished inside. Soviet cables, classified for decades, bluntly noted the Grom's impotence and the fatal consequences of ammunition stored beneath the crew. The official record omits these details. The internal Soviet nickname Grob, the coffin, spread quietly among observers. The promise of mechanized protection collapsed in fire and steel, but no doctrinal correction followed. Ridgelines above the Panjshir and Kandahar valleys became execution sites for Soviet mechanized doctrine. Mujahideen RPG teams, positioned on high ground, waited for convoys to snake through mountain passes. The BMP-1's low gun elevation and thin roof armor, just 6mm, offered no defense against plunging fire. In April 1980, a convoy near Kandahar lost 2 BMP-1 vehicles in under a minute. An RPG-7 struck the lead vehicle's hull, igniting 73mm ammunition stowed beneath the seats. The second BMP-1 caught fire as crew tried to reverse. 11 soldiers died inside, trapped by doors fused shut from the blast. The interior temperature rose past survivable limits in less than 40 seconds. There was no airburst, no high-tech warhead, just a shaped charge at the right angle. Survivors welded sandbags and spare track to the roof in a desperate attempt at extra protection. Some units mounted AGS-17 grenade launchers on the turret, hoping to suppress attackers before they could fire. Infantry abandoned the doctrine of fighting from inside, riding on the hull instead. Field modifications failed to alter the fatal pattern. High-angle RPG strikes, ammunition cook-off, rapid crew death. Repair depots filled with burned-out hulls, most with no survivors. A 40th Army veteran recalled that when the hull cracked, the crew's fate was sealed within seconds. The official casualty ratio told the same story. Up to 80% of BMP-1 crew deaths came from internal detonations after a single hit. The vehicle, designed to shield men from fallout and machine gun fire, became a coffin under mountain ambush. The contradiction between doctrine and terrain was not a tactical puzzle. It was a death sentence, repeated in every narrow pass. Grozny, January 1995. The 131st Mykop Brigade entered the city with a column of BMP-1 vehicles, following orders to clear urban blocks under the cover of armor. Chechen fighters waited above, RPG teams stationed in upper floors and on rooftops, aiming for the thinnest point 6 millimeters of roof plate. In the first 12 hours, more than 20 BMP vehicles were penetrated from above. Official logs record that most vehicles burned from the inside out. After action reports from the Russian Academy of Rocket Space and Land Forces list secondary detonations in nearly every case. The 73mm ammunition drum, stacked head to tail beneath the turret, ignited within seconds of a roof hit. Crew and infantry were trapped as the internal temperature spiked beyond survivable limits. Hatches, warped by the blast, jammed shut. Rear doors, welded to double as fuel tanks, fused closed by fire. Escape was impossible. A Mykop Brigade veteran described the aftermath. You could hear the men inside, but the doors would not open. The BMP became a grave before anyone outside could reach them. Of 85 BMP-1 vehicles deployed in the first assault, 31 were destroyed in Grozny streets. 73% of losses were attributed to close-range RPG strikes and internal ammunition cook-off. Survivability for the crew approached zero. The machine, designed to deliver men through nuclear fire, failed to save them from a basement RPG. In Grozny, the Battle Grave of Infantry was not a nickname. It was a verdict. Today, the BMP-1 still serves in active war zones. Its armor remains 16mm at the thickest. Ammunition sits beneath the crew. The nickname survives. Grob, the word for coffin. Every time a commander orders troops inside, the contradiction endures. Survival was never guaranteed, only the statistics of death. Leave your thoughts in the comments.